I don't know how to record an intro, but I need to intro this somehow. So today I'm making a video reviewing the Nintendo Switch 2 because I want to share my thoughts and opinions on it, and also I want to make more videos on my channel, kinda. Like and subscribe maybe if you end up liking. Okay, to the video. So with the Switch 2, I want to talk about, well, first start off with the pros, because I really want to try and start off the video trying to build up the console because I like it, I enjoy it. And I want to start off first with backwards compatibility. The console has a really good level of backwards compatibility from launch, where it's able to access a bunch of the Switch 1 catalog of games on day one, as well as controllers. It is very able to access, or you were able to use a bunch of controllers that were for the Switch 1 on the Switch 2. Unfortunately, they do not power on the console, but they still work as long as you power the console on first before turning the controller on, which, in my opinion, is a great thing for consoles nowadays to have, which also segues greatly into reason number 2 for why I think the Switch 2 is at least a bit worth purchasing, or one good selling point of the console at least, is the increase in power in terms of the hardware. Being able to run games at a higher frame rate, as well as just being able to run things at a higher resolution and everything, it is a great experience playing games without being a low frame rate mess like some Pokemon or third-party titles were on the Switch 1. Playing those same exact games will world of a difference. Like, the background for this video will be me playing, will be a bit of gameplay of me playing Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and there is no Switch 2 version or anything. That was just from playing it on the Switch 2 normally. No Switch 2 version with an update, yes, but just this. And it was able to run as smoothly as it was, while at the same time not having any, well, it did have a couple. There are still some glitches that are in Scarlet and Violet and other games that, if they were just there to begin with, then unfortunately you're still going to be able to run into those glitches and everything just on their own while still playing on the Switch 2, and it won't be a fault of the Switch 2, more like a fault on the game itself, unfortunately. But still, just, it is a much better and smoother experience playing games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and any other game that ran poorly on the Switch 1 on the Switch 2. And then reason number 3, which unfortunately is the last, for the pros I have personally for why you would have any interest in buying the Switch 2, is the exclusives. One, there is Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and there are a couple of good games coming out soon, like Pokemon Legends ZA, Metroid Prime 4, Rhythm Haven, as well as, shoot, I forgot the name, Tomodachi Life. There we go, the Tomodachi Life sequel. I forgot. I'm excited for that game too, but all those games you'll be able to play on the Switch 2, but there is a bit of a negative that also a double-edged sword with some of those games, which I'll get into in a second, but still, being able to access all those games, as well as any other Switch 2 exclusives coming out soon, as well as the entire exclusive catalog that the Switch 1 had on top of it, is another great reason for buying the Switch 2 if you're interested in it at all, because it does give you a lot of options to choose from. But I would say that is about it, because most first-party Nintendo titles that were made for the Switch 1, they run pretty well on the Switch 1. They don't run pretty poorly from what I've seen, like with Mario Odyssey, Super Mario 3D Land, not 3D World, and Bowser's Fury. I played that, and Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. I didn't have many issues playing a bunch of different first-party Nintendo titles on the Switch 1, so that is one, I guess that is a bit of a segue to the negatives or cons for the Switch 1, is if the exclusives in games that are like Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza especially are not games you're going to be very enticed by, and mainly just other ones that are already available on the Switch 1, it would mainly just be a better idea to maybe play those games on the Switch 1, especially due to a couple things like pricing and other things, which mainly would be just pricing, because $450, yeah, that is steep pricing. But anyway, besides that, I'll get into the other cons. Like, for a very important thing, Nintendo is trying to, I guess, crack down on people using the MIG switch and other things like that for, like, incorrect purposes, where, you know, they put their game on their cartridge, the files from their cartridge, onto the MIG switch, and then sell the original cartridge to get money back, while still technically being able to play the game because of its files being loaded onto a MIG switch or something. You will, and because of that, and then trying to sort of negate that, or get rid of people doing that, they now have a thing where whenever they detect two people playing the game and it's registered as the exact same copy of the game, they ban your console from being able to work. And unfortunately, the negative of that is definitely that now that makes it very hard to get second-hand copies of games without having to worry on if this is going to happen to you or not, because if you end up playing the game at the exact same time as the person who MIG switched that game and then did whatever, at the same time they're illegally playing their version of your game, then both of your consoles are going to get banned. And unfortunately, that results in a whole thing where you're going to have to contact Nintendo support, which is really unfortunate, though. It is an unfortunate thing. Yeah, and then another reason why to be against buying the Nintendo Switch 2, from what I've heard and from the looks of things, the Joy-Cons and their joysticks were built in a very similar manner to the Switch 1's joysticks, making it to where they might be susceptible to Joy-Con drift, similar to the Switch 1's Joy-Con drift. which unfortunately means if you don't have any other controllers besides the Switch 2's Joy-Cons, and that means if they get Joy-Con drift anytime soon, you're gonna be out of luck and going to have to just not play your console for a week while you ship out your Joy-Cons to a facility to get them fixed. And then number 3, or like my third reason for why to be sort of against buying the Switch 2, definitely the bricking situation. Because while I understand that sometimes people misuse their consoles and misuse it to cause like chaos in the gaming community, like on online games and other things like that, but when Nintendo is doing some of the things they do, like being as anti-modding and other sort of things as they are, it makes it difficult to completely trust them with them having the power to break your console at any given moment. And then 4 is definitely the lack of ownership that Nintendo wants you to have with the console and the games. Because the thing is, well, you already know a little bit about it with the bricking situation that I explained just a second ago, that the whole EULA, or Terms of Agreement, the things that almost everyone skips when signing up for a new service or logging into a new account, those people have read those and they've been seeing that there is a bit of a thing with those where they try and make it seem like you don't fully own the console you have. And I don't think the people saying that or people finding that out are necessarily wrong when they found that out. I'm drawing blanks on specifically like what was said and how exactly it was worded, but I do know if you spend a little bit out there and you will be able to see that in the terms and conditions and other things like that, Nintendo has worded things in their terms and conditions and stuff to where they're trying to make it seem as if you don't have full ownership of any Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive titles that you own, as well as the console itself. Mainly just partial ownership, or as some people are phrasing it, just simply a license to have the console and games, which isn't something I'm fond of personally, and I don't think many of you out there are also not fond of, so then again is another reason for why I believe the Switch 2 isn't something that not many people would want to buy. If you're a casual gamer that doesn't really care that much, I guess I could see how you maybe wouldn't care much about this, but if you're someone that wants to own this game, wants to have it for a long time, and wants to be able to play it for a long time, there's some problems that definitely arise from these whole terms and conditions, all the EULAs and stuff involving the Switch 2 that are on the Switch 2 and the services and everything. And then I'd say my final issue with the Switch 2 is honestly navigating the console's home screen, main menus, the settings, the eShop, I guess the Switch Online screen as well, is that it feels way too similar to the Switch One's navigation, which is a bit of a letdown due to the fact that, like, Nintendo most of the time, and even like PlayStation going from console to console does this as well, where they at least try to change up the look of the menus and stuff whenever you're navigating through them to make it a little bit of an enjoyable and unique experience going through the PlayStation 5, for example, where its menus, while functionally are very much the same to the PlayStation 4, they aesthetically look very different, which is something I like because it differentiates them not only as a console but as an experience using them. And unfortunately, the Switch 2 doesn't have much of a difference from the Switch 1, which really disappoints me to some end because, one, the Switch 1 had a lot of disappointments in its main menus and navigation. Like, the main menu itself didn't have customizable themes or anything, and the fact that it's just the exact same simple black and white on the Switch 2 as well is still very disappointing. I will say the Switch 1's eShop, as well as the Nintendo Switch Online service, that whole tab, it's relatively decent. It's not bad going through it, but it is still a little bit of a disappointment with how it just looks the same as if you were to go on the Switch 1. So yeah, and with that, and then all these negatives about how, like, the whole bricking situation, how you'd have to be wary buying second-hand copies of games as well from now on, if you plan Switch 2, if you plan on doing that, since, you kind of buy the console to play games on it. Yeah, there is a couple. It's just not, and I don't want to make it seem like it's a completely terrible experience with all these cons and how I have more than pros, but at the same time, it's also that there's a lot of things Nintendo does with the Nintendo Switch 2 and things that they've been doing in general as a company that are very disappointing to see, and things that don't make the overall Switch 2 experience the most exciting. Because I do like playing Mario Kart. I like how different the game is and how it looks from Mario Kart 8 to Mario Kart World. It doesn't seem like the same game, or like it feels very, it looks like it feels very different to play. And its open world aspect, as well as its photo mode, seems very cool. But at the same time, with the whole ownership thing, like I said, it makes it difficult to want to buy that, considering it's like, am I going to even be allowed to play this farther down the line? Like, yeah, I'll be able to play it now, but will I be able to play it years from now still? And yeah, I'd say that'll be it for the main talk itself. I'll cut this recording so I can record the whole final verdict to say, to put all my thoughts into one concise TLDR. So to condense everything down that I talked about basically is just, I give the console a 7 out of 10. It is good, just that there's a lot of things going against it, unfortunately. And yeah, I don't entirely recommend it unless you're a massive Nintendo fan already and we're just already sold on the idea of the console. So yeah, if you're a casual, not really that into Nintendo, I can't really recommend it. But something I can recommend